Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: IU Health Southern Indiana physicians, primary care and specialty care providers now accepting new patients in Bloomington and throughout South Central Indiana. siphysicians.org, IU Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, working to improve cybersecurity and provide policy guidance through partnerships with industry, government, and academia.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. Indiana voters head to the polls in about 3 weeks. Usually, Indiana's primary is too late to matter, but not this year. Who are you actually for when you cast your ballot? We'll go over delegates, superdelegates, and more. Thousands of people are protesting the state's new abortion law.
It's an attack on women and families, and it's probably unconstitutional.
Ahead, a look at the legal challenge, and our statehouse reporter joins us to go through the law and explain what it does and does not do. Plus, new data shows that while Buddhism is losing practitioners around the world, it's growing in North America.
You get out of high school and go into college, you have to really look at yourself and say, this is what I grew up on. Do I really believe it?
Coming up, what is drawing Americans and Hoosiers in particular to the Buddhist faith? Those stories, plus the latest news headlines from across the state, right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Well, the whole nation will be looking at Indiana during the May 3rd primary election. That's because Indiana will have a significant impact on selecting this year's presidential nominees. Sophia Salaby reports on what to expect when you go to the polls.
When looking at the ballot for Indiana's May 3rd primary, you can't help but be overwhelmed. You'll see your party's candidates for governor and state offices, as well as presidential nominees. But who are the delegates listed on the ballot, and who are you actually voting for to represent you?
Everyone who's voting in the primary votes for the state delegates who represent their district. So when the people of Monroe County go out to the polls, they'll see a long list of delegates that they can choose from to represent them at the state convention.
Kyla Cox-Deckard is the former vice chair and deputy chair of the Monroe County Democratic Party. She served as a state and national delegate for her party in 2012. During the primary, anyone can register to run for a state delegate position for their party, but this process varies by state, by party, and even by county. In Monroe County, Democratic delegates are voted on by county council district.
You can choose up to 15 people that you would like to select as delegates to the state convention. And the people who you select as delegates to the state convention, they have the ability to be able to vote for the national delegate.
The Monroe County GOP decided this year to run their delegate elections by township in an effort to increase voter turnout and give those running in outlying areas of the county a more competitive chance at the ballot. These delegates will go to their party's state convention in June.
You will choose people you know or people you trust. They are going to represent your vote for 3 races. There's 3 races that are not chosen on the primary ballot by both parties: Lieutenant Governor, Superintendent of Public Education, and the Attorney General.
It's those 3 positions, Lieutenant Governor, Superintendent, and Attorney General, that state delegates vote for, but that's not the only duty they're responsible for.
As state delegate, our role is to review the party platform and vote on that. And then it is also to confirm our nominees for the state offices.
The first chance for Americans to vote was the Iowa caucus February 1st. Since then, 33 states voted, and Donald Trump, who is leading the Republican polls, only needs half of the remaining delegates to secure his nomination. Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton has nearly 75% of the delegates needed to get the nomination from her party. However, Indiana's vote on May 3rd can still have a big impact on how each party's national delegates vote. For Democrats, it's at their state convention that they vote for national delegates to represent Indiana at the Democratic National Convention.
In the 9th Congressional District, we can elect 6 delegates to the National Convention, 3 men and 3 women. And so this is an area that runs all the way from here in Bloomington all the way down south near Kentucky. And so between all of that space, there's going to be 6 people who are going to be elected delegate to the National Convention.
There are 56 national delegates from districts, and they'll vote for presidential candidates proportionally to how Indiana votes. So if Hillary Clinton wins 60% of the vote in the 9th district where we live, she'll receive 4 district delegates. There are also 18 at-large delegates, 7 at-large alternates, 9 party leader and elected official delegates that vote proportionally with the state. In addition, the Democratic Party has superdelegates that automatically go to the party's national convention and can choose who they vote for.
Superdelegates are people who are either elected officials, so for example, the members of Congress from Indiana are state delegates, or members of the DNC are also state delegates.
For Republicans, the process is actually quite different. Those hoping to be a national delegate have to apply by congressional district. Then they're judged by a closed caucus of party members. Each district has 3 delegates. There are an additional 27 at-large delegates and 3 automatic delegates, which consist of 2 national committeemen and a party chair. The district delegates vote with your district, but the at-large delegates vote with the overall state. For example, if Trump wins your district, but Cruz wins the entire state, then your district delegates will vote for Trump and the at-large delegates will vote for Cruz. This current election system of primaries and delegates is actually relatively new. For most of the United States history, party leaders chose who ran and who won elections. The country saw a shift in the 1960s and 70s, which opened up the election process more to the American people.
I mean, when you think about it, it's a little bit of a convoluted process, right? We elect people who then get to elect people who then get to elect, the president.
But Ellis says the best way to make your vote count this primary is to know who you're voting for.
I would ask the voters to try to meet some of your delegates. Most of them are precinct committeemen. Most of them have public phone numbers. Find out if they represent you. It is really easy to just pick 4 names or pick 6 names. But remember, you're picking those names to represent you. So you want to make sure the people that actually get there are representing your interest. Because I don't know your interest. You do. So take some active involvement in that is what I would say.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Sophia Salaby.
And for those wondering why the Indiana May primary is in May, it's because of historic scheduling of primaries. Former Governor Mitch Daniels proposed moving the state's primary earlier, but the idea didn't gain any traction because it would have fallen in the middle of the legislative session. Now for headlines, we go over to Barbara Brozier, who has the latest on this week's top stories.
Thanks, Joe. Peabody Energy's bankruptcy filing could impact more than 1,000 Hoosier employees across the state. Peabody says it's $10 billion in debt. This week, Peabody filed for federal bankruptcy protection from its creditors. Like many coal companies, it's been squeezed by increasing regulatory costs, a global oversupply of coal, and the rise of natural gas. Peabody runs 6 Indiana mines, which is more than it operates in any other state. Nearly 3% of Hoosier students are using state scholarships to attend private school. More than 32,000 students now use scholarships, up from around 4,000 students the first year in 2011 to 2012. The scholarships allow low-income students to enroll in private schools. The scholarship provides either 50 or 90% of tuition based on the family's income. An Indiana University study finds that Indianapolis is the only Hoosier city thinking ahead when it comes to electric cars. The Circle City ranked 13th on IU's list of major U.S. cities that are most ready for electric vehicles. IU's School of Public and Environmental Affairs graded the cities based on incentives they offer. The stretch of I-69 connecting Bloomington to Martinsville is 8 months behind schedule. Section 5 of the interstate was supposed to be complete by October, but INDOT officials say it won't be finished until June of next year. They say the delay is the result of a contract dispute between construction subcontractors and the I-69 development partners. Indiana deer hunters will soon be able to use high-powered rifles on private land across the state. High-powered rifles can have a range of as much as half a mile. The previous group of rifles could only shoot about 100 yards. Some groups say they're worried about the safety of allowing long-range guns for deer hunting. But the bill's author claims the rifles are more accurate. Indiana is among the worst in the nation when it comes to the life expectancy of poor people. A study published this week in the Journal of American Medical Association says Indiana is one of 3 states with the lowest life expectancy for that group. Just how much shorter their life expectancy is depends on what city people live in. Gary has the lowest life expectancy at just over 77.4 years. Indianapolis has the 3rd lowest at 77.6 years. The state's highest court says Indianapolis's smoking ban will remain intact. The ruling overturned part of an Indiana Court of Appeals ruling, which said the exemption for the off-track betting facility violated the state constitution. Several Indianapolis bars sued over the smoking ban, which is more restrictive than state law. The smoking ban in Indy took effect in 2012 and banned smoking in virtually all indoor facilities. Private clubs and cigar and hookah bars are exempt from the law. The list of Indiana counties wanting to offer needle exchange programs keeps growing. Wayne County ranks 4th in the state in hepatitis C cases, so health officials declared a public health emergency in October. County commissioners will vote next week on whether to offer a needle exchange. The state has to approve the plan before the needle exchange can start. Wayne County hopes to open the exchange in June. The Indiana State Department of Agriculture is looking for new ways to make Indiana specialty crops competitive. Specialty crops are plants cultivated to be used as food, medicine, or decoration. Around $400,000 from the USDA's Specialty Crop Block Grant program will be split among research and marketing projects for the crops. Indiana's biggest crops remain corn and soybeans, but farmers are producing other crops on few acres. Hops have become a large crop in Indiana. That's because craft beer producers have gone looking for local hops. The state is accepting proposals for specialty crop funding through June 6th. Tens of thousands of people are in Bloomington this weekend for Indiana University's Little 500 bike race. The entire week leading up to the event is a busy one for police. They often respond to multiple calls involving illegal alcohol and drug use. But last year, a call came in that was much more serious. IU student Hannah Wilson went missing. Police later found her body in Brown County.
We always keep those things in our minds. You know, those things, those types of crimes, those serious types of crimes are something that we're always preparing for. Little 5 brings in a lot of people into town. And while our normal day-to-day calls are those large party calls, large group people calls, we also keep the individuals in mind.
Police say students should be extra cautious while celebrating this weekend and should always travel in groups. One of Indiana's most popular summer destinations will remain closed to the general public for the 3rd year in a row. The National Park Service restricted access to the Mount Baldy sand dune after a section of the dune collapsed in 2013, trapping a 6-year-old boy. The boy survived, but geologists have been studying the dune ever since. It won't reopen until they determine why the hole formed. The results of that study are expected this fall. And the black bear that had been wandering between Indiana and Michigan for the last year has been euthanized in Michigan. It was the first bear seen in Indiana for more than 140 years. Originally, the DNR planned to capture the bear and move him back to Michigan, but wildlife authorities believed the bear had become a threat to people. And Joe, the bear actually showed up on someone's back porch and tried to kick the door in. So
yeah, I wouldn't know what to do in that scenario. Thanks, Barbara. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. Thousands of people are protesting the state's new abortion law. But why are people reacting now after the governor penned his signature to the bill, making it law? While most religions in the U.S. are losing members, Buddhism is growing. Ahead, we explore the faith and why more Americans are being drawn to it. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
Nature takes you places where you've never gone before.
It's watching something that's actually happened.
Nature sure drew me in the story.
Just their power and their grace.
You know, it was just so beautiful to watch them.
The movement and just watching the body and watching the chase. Like this huge, lush, vibrant watercolor.
James.
There was such a shot of underneath watching these elephants swim in this deep water.
I had no idea even they could swim like that.
I saw that one monkey pulling on this one monkey's tail, and the monkey like, man, what you doing? What you doing?
It's like the theater of the wild or something.
7 billion trillion animals living on one planet.
It's like more colorful than than you think life can possibly be.
Somewhere between the mystique and the beauty of it is reason enough to sit down and watch.
That's life, and that's nature.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. The battle over women's rights in Indiana is heating up because of ongoing backlash over the abortion bill Governor Mike Pence signed into law last month. The legislation is getting national attention after legal experts deemed it among the most restrictive in the nation. The bill includes several measures, including a ban on abortions based on gender, race, or disability, and a requirement that fetal remains be buried or cremated. But it's not just the legislation. Some people are protesting. On what would normally be a quiet Saturday at the Statehouse, roughly 1,000 people rallied for women's rights. The signs and the shouts were in reaction to abortion legislation lawmakers passed and Governor Mike Pence approved last month.
It's very invasive, it's wrong, and it needs to be repealed. And I really wanted to support women. I think that women need to have control of their bodies.
But it's not just the long list of provisions in the abortion bill these people are upset with. They're also protesting a process.
You really can't get people that involved until after the fact. We didn't know what the wording was. People just didn't talk about it. We just didn't know about it.
Here's what happened. The final version of the abortion bill actually started out as multiple proposals. A bill in the House focused on the disposal of fetal remains. When that bill made its way to the Senate, lawmakers there inserted provisions from a different failed abortion bill that bans abortions based on race, gender, or disability.
The big problem that I had when the bill came back over from the Senate, it contained some very, very troubling language that had no chance of a debate on our side. Whenever we deal with something of that magnitude, I'm a true believer that it needs to go through the process, it needs to go through a committee hearing, it needs to have public testimony, and that just did not happen when the bill came back over from the Senate.
Representative Sean Eberhardt is one of several House Republicans who was unhappy with how the bill got to the governor's desk.
When you have almost every single Republican female member of our caucus that is standing against the bill and that has concerns about the bill, you would think that we would take a step back and really think if is this really something we want to do?
But supporters of the legislation say the public and lawmakers had plenty of time to discuss the individual proposals long before they made their way to the floor. They argue the protest over the new abortion rules was too little and too late. State House reporter Brandon Smith joins us now to dive deeper into this new law and the reactions to it. Thanks for being here, Brandon. You know, this is a complicated piece of legislation with a lot of specific components. Help us a little bit understand just what this law is covering.
Well, first, there are the two major provisions that everyone is focused on. Is first, the so-called selective abortion ban that bans women from having an abortion solely because of a fetus's characteristics. That's potential disability, sex, or race. The second major provision deals with fetal remains and requires all fetal remains to be either buried or cremated. Now, what I want to stress here is that that provision only imposes requirements on a medical facility. So if a woman has a miscarriage or an abortion at home, there are no requirements placed on her. And then there's little language throughout the bill that deals with sort of tinkering around with existing abortion laws, including language governing informed consent.
So how much of this is new?
The two major provisions I just talked about, those are brand new to Indiana.
And then is this law unique to Indiana?
Well, the fetal remains portion I can't really speak to. It's possible that there are other states with similar or even identical language to Indiana's, but the selective abortion ban is sort of unique to Indiana. There are some states that ban abortions because of a fetus's sex. There's one that bans it because of a fetus's race, and another that bans it because of the fetus's potential disability, but Indiana is the only state that's combined all of those into one law.
The ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky. What's the focus of that lawsuit?
It's those two major provisions. They want to strike down the fetal remains requirements and the selective abortion ban. They don't speak to the little language that I mentioned throughout the rest of the bill. And ACLU Executive Director Jane Henniger seems pretty confident about it.
We feel very strongly that we have a good case. Again, on its face, this law is clearly unconstitutional, and we believe that we have identified the arguments that articulate how and why it's unconstitutional and why it should not be allowed to take effect.
And Brandon, when does the law now take effect?
Like most laws the General Assembly passes, it's set to take effect July 1st, though a court action could halt those two major provisions from taking effect.
Okay, thank you very much, Brandon.
Thank you, Joe.
All of the world's major religions are expected to grow over the next few decades, except for Buddhism. But as Becca Costello reports, a shift in rhetoric could account for the many communities of Buddhists living throughout Indiana.
Buddhists in Bloomington have a lot of options for practicing the faith. The Tibetan-Mongolian Buddhist Cultural Center offers weekly services, meditations, and classes. The Gaiden Kacho Shing Center for Buddhist Studies and Practices opened in late 2014 and hosts discussions and displays sacred Buddhist artifacts. The variety of Buddhist centers shows how different practitioners can be. Some see it as a religion, while others see it as more of a philosophy. Bruce Hare practices Buddhism at the Sanshinji Zen community. He grew up as a Christian, but was drawn to Buddhism as a young adult.
For me, I don't consider myself spiritual. I do consider myself religious. And I consider myself religious in that I'm serious about practice.
Bruce meditates and comes to every weekly service. His wife Dawn, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite.
I really enjoy the talks and the lectures. I don't connect with the some of the more ritual aspects of it.
Dawn doesn't identify as Buddhist and considers herself more spiritual than religious. And that's what experts say has been driving Americans to Buddhism.
There have been interesting moves made recently by people like the 14th Dalai Lama to try to talk about the ways in which what's really important is spirituality as opposed to a particular religious commitment.
But in the United States, Buddhism offers a very realistic day-to-day life, teachings and so forth. So people who are in the West are very smart and wise and very knowledgeable, so they are very drawn towards the Buddhist idea and the philosophy of life, how they can attain the happiness and peace within this in the life that we live in everyday life.
The Gaiden Kacho Shing Center in Bloomington is experiencing a large increase in the number of participants, with people coming from across the Midwest to take classes. On any given day, you might find a session on how to practice meditation, an introductory course on Buddhism, or a karma yoga class. In North America, the number of Buddhists is expected to increase by nearly 2.5 million by the year 2050, according to a Pew Research study. But that gain will be more than offset by what's going on in the rest of the world. Globally, Buddhism is expected to lose 3 million practitioners during that same time period. The ideals of Buddhism seem to be particularly attractive to young people. The Pew study doesn't break down religion trends by age, but Professor Nance says a lot of young adults want to consider faiths other than what they grew up with, and they're attracted to the flexibility Buddhism provides.
And when you have someone with the status and stature of the Dalai Lama, a sort of eminent Buddhist, telling you, you don't have to be a Buddhist, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a Buddhist. Be a kind person, be a good person, be a spiritual person, and then he'll of course tell you what that means. I think that students they feel comfortable with that, and they don't feel necessarily like they have to buy into Buddhism to do the kinds of things that this eminent Buddhist recommends.
Despite the different ways they interpret Buddhism, Bruce and Dawn got married at the Sanshinji Zen Temple late last year.
We tried to make it something that would fit for both of us, to be both spiritual and religious.
The ceremony included Buddhist vows for Bruce, and although Dawn used separate vows, she voiced her support. The couple is comfortable with their own individual ideas of what Buddhism means to them.
So, we're all different, and everybody's going to find something that speaks to them.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Becca Costello.
The Dalai Lama will visit Indianapolis in June. He will speak at a public event on the state fairgrounds. The last time the Dalai Lama spoke in Indianapolis, over 10,000 people came to hear him speak. Well, this is a topic that could be divisive at your dinner table. Should Indiana natives be called Hoosiers or Indianans? Indiana's U.S. senators penned a bipartisan letter to the federal office for printing government documents, asking the office to use Hoosier as the official word to describe Indiana natives. Right now, they're referred to as Indianans. The senators say newspapers in Indiana have been using the term Hoosier since 1826. And we have a poll you can take on our website at WTIUnews.org. Tell us what you think Indiana natives should be called. And that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following: IU Health Southern Indiana physicians, primary care and specialty care providers, now accepting new patients in Bloomington and throughout South Central Indiana. SIphysicians.org, IU Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, working to improve cybersecurity and provide policy guidance through partnerships with industry, government, and academia.
Smithville Fiber, the Gigacity Company, fiber internet, HD, and digital IPTV in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.